Welcome to Divorce Mortgage Strategies, brought to you by the Divorce Lending Association, where clarity meets strategy in the financial side of divorce. Whether you're a family law professional, a financial expert, or someone navigating the complexities of divorce yourself, this podcast is your go-to resource for trusted insight into how real property and mortgage financing intersect with divorce outcomes. We don't just talk about houses. We talk about strategic solutions that protect futures. Let's dive in. Today, we welcome host, certified divorce lending professional Cindy Scobee and her guest, family law attorney Mei Shih.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cindy Scobee. I am a certified divorce lending professional and a contributing member or host, I should say, on this podcast on behalf of the Divorce Lending Association. I have been working in the divorce space for nearly 4 years and I'm obviously, as I said, a CDLP, and I'm also collaboratively trained. And today I have Mei Shih, make sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, who is a family law attorney, and she was gracious enough to say that yes to being on this podcast. So first of all, I want to just say, one of the things is how did we meet? So I want to know who you are and how did I'm remembering something where it was in an email and I think I called you or something, but thought I would just kind of throw that out there of how we got connected.
Well, Cindy, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really honored. So, yes, you did get my name correct. So, my name is Mei Shih. I've been a practicing attorney for a little bit over 15 years now and really focusing on the family law aspect of things since 2018 when we moved here to Washington. I was collaboratively trained in, I think in 2002 or 2003, I forget. But I was so heavily deep in litigation that I never had time to dive into it.
Great.
So I went.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I went solo just a year ago now and decided, hey, this is my time to focus, my time to really get my head out of this litigation fog and into a lot more cooperative and collaborative work. So Cindy, I think the way we met was I sent out this embarrassing email to this whole big listserv, including the collaborative law community, just introducing myself and really opening that door to meeting professionals like yourself. I think you called me and I actually picked up the phone.
Yep.
And there was a moment of silence and we were both just quiet because one, no one ever calls, and two, no one ever picks up their phone.
Well, I think we're standouts with just that alone. But anyway, yeah, and I think it was because we lived relatively close to one another. And we were like, let's grab coffee or meet or something.
Yes, that's right. And we went to our local coffee joint and we had such a great conversation that day.
Yeah, no, it was lovely. And I want to say that was 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago, that we had the pleasure of meeting. And anyway, again, thank you so much for being on this with me. I really appreciate it. I know what you're going to have to share today is going to be super valuable to folks. So one of the questions I love to ask is what drew you to family law? I mean, there's so many different areas of law out there, and why family law?
Well, I was an older law student when I started law school, and it was in the early 2000s during our Great Depression of 2007. When I graduated law school, no one was hiring, right? No one wanted to take the liability of having a new attorney. No one wanted to pay that extra malpractice insurance. But somehow I fell into dependency work at that time. And
Mm-hmm.
dependency work is when CPS gets involved with a family, they remove the kids from the home. I represented the parent who caused the removal.
Okay.
From my work there, I worked directly with one parent, and that really had a profound effect on me because I saw that with representation, with some advice, it can change someone's life. And that was really one of the reasons why I got into law is I wanted to have that individual impact on a family, on a person, and not on these big, huge corporations that, you're simply just another attorney on their team. From there, we moved around quite a bit. And when we landed here in Washington, it was just a natural path for me. I dabbled a bit in adoptions before moving here, but continued to do family law work with divorces, separations, and really just dabbling in it. But when I moved here, I saw the market for family law attorneys, and not only family law attorneys, but for Asian American family law attorneys. There are very few of us. I can probably count us all on one hand here in King County. I saw that opportunity and really just immersed myself into the family law world here.
Well, and we're lucky that you did. So,
Thank you.
yes. So a question that I have that I think is really important to ask is, each divorce has its own unique journey in this process. And if you could change anything or give any heads up advice to someone just starting down this path, what would it be?
I always tell my clients to have a source of emotional support because it is so personal, right? It not only impacts your family structure, it impacts your finances, it impacts your friend structure as well. So I always ask someone to have a hype person, someone like their best friend that they can commiserate with and they can bash the other spouse, but someone who will just sit there and listen to them and offer that support. I also ask my clients to have someone who is a voice of reason.
Mm.
So someone who would say, hey, don't do this because of X, Y, and Z impact it could have on you or your children. And then I always ask that my clients have someone who they can process their emotions with, someone who can actually help them, like a therapist. And then lastly, I always want to make sure that my clients understand the law, and that's where I come in. A lot of times the clients come to me and they said, my friend got this from their divorce and I want this too. Or my friend got sole custody of their children. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And our facts are the same. And so I do want them to understand that facts are different for every single case, and your friends might not share with you the most important crucial detail of their case that led to them having sole custody.
Right. And I think too, my other question is having a strong divorce team, which is what you just touched on. So besides having other like friends, family, is there anybody else on the divorce, let's say the divorce side of professionals that you always find to be really helpful in this process to support clients, or who do you bring on board to form kind of that team?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I always advise clients now is to get yourself a divorce coach, right? We have me as the attorney who can help you understand the law. You have your therapist on the other side that can help you work through the emotions. But then we also have a coach here who can help you process what a divorce looks like, how to approach the other person, your attorney, how to communicate with your spouse. I also request that they meet with someone like yourself, like a CDLP, because most of the time, and I know this goes into our conversation later, is that the majority of my clients own homes. And usually that has the biggest impact and it's their biggest asset in their divorce. So, what do you do with that? Right. And if one of the first things we talk about is the family home. And so I want to make sure that if they want to keep the home, they can. And that's in discussions with me, that's in discussions with you as a CDLP. And then if their finances are complicated, hey, let's get a financial neutral on this case because they can offer unbiased advice and go through the numbers with both parties. And lastly, of course, if there are children, I mean, as an attorney, I can help advocate for my clients, but hey, I really want them to sit down with a parenting expert to understand the impact a parenting plan can have on the kids and set up really a structure that benefits the children and eventually the entire family.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think one of the things that comes up is cost. So what I find interesting is sometimes clients will use their attorney for all of those areas, And the attorney is well intended and wants to support. However, they're probably maybe not the best person for those questions. And so I tend to think that it actually, you think about all these people in your team and the cost around that. And I think more so that it's probably going to be most cost effective to have these other professionals than always going to your attorney who may or may not know those answers. And I just wanted to see if you agree with that, if you have an opinion, because I feel like when people think about a team, they think, oh my gosh, this is going to be so expensive.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that because what we're looking at, gosh, I think the average billable hour for attorney is somewhere between maybe $350, and that's really on the low end, to upwards of what I've seen is $650 an hour.
Wow.
Now, when I've worked with other professionals, usually it's on the lower end of what you look at as a billable rate for an attorney, and they can give you the advice you're actually looking for. My clients can come to me and process and talk about, well, here are my finances. How do I budget?
Yeah.
Right. I can give them really my personal perspective of how to budget, but that is just looking at my own budget for my own experience. So I will say, hey, client, go talk to a financial planner, go talk to the financing neutral, and they can look at all these numbers in detail with you and anticipate this because they have the experience and background to do so. Not only that, they're less expensive. And if you and your spouse are both working with the neutral, that costs a split. So
Right.
definitely, I think there's definitely a cost savings with working with the neutrals and a bigger team.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I feel the same way. I just think it's great to share that here. So, what would you say is the percentage of people that you help that have real estate? Is it 90%, 50%, 100%? I mean, like, how does real estate factor in terms of for every case?
I would say the majority of my clients, I just gave a quick look this morning, and as of right now, about 75% of my clients own real property. And I would say at least a quarter of them have more than one property,
Mm,
whether that's in state or out of state, whether it's something they purchased for their kids. So the majority of clients have real property, and it's usually their biggest asset.
And can you speak a little bit about the emotions around the marital family home that you see when clients come to you? What kind of emotions are you seeing around that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, something I hear over and over again is that this is the only home my kids know,
Yeah.
or we chose this home together. I love this home. It's my dream home. So there is so much involved, right? There is the decorating, just exactly, their kitchen is exactly the way they want it. It's in the right neighborhood, right? So there is so much involved in a home, but there's also so much emotional baggage that we have to unpack along with that. What I get my clients to realize is I have them sit down and we talk about why
Mhm.
they want to keep the home, and what I often bring up is I talk about this emotional baggage that comes with the home. I have them sit and think about the argument they had with their ex at the dining table, or the time ex didn't show up to dinner when they were supposed to, or the bedroom they once shared together. Are they okay with having those feelings around the house if they keep the home? Right.
That's
So
brilliant.
that's definitely one thing I have them think about. And the other aspect is, well, what about the financial impact that it can have on them? Right? Can they pay the mortgage and all of their expected monthly expenses?
Mhm.
Can they afford to save for a rainy day in case their roof leaks or there's a flood or they have to replace the water heater? And so I really want them to think about the practical aspects of keeping the home other than their feelings of this is my home and this is where I want to stay. This is best for the kids.
That's brilliant. You bring a very much a human aspect to it. Like, I feel like when I meet with clients originally, sometimes there's that, this is what I want because I
Mhm.
maybe don't want the other party to have that. And then when you start to unpack some of the emotions around it, then they can pivot. Um, so I think that's amazing, and kudos to you for, really asking those hard questions and how to think about it. Another thing I always say is if you're going to keep the marital home, get an inspection. because
Hmm.
we don't want to have any unforeseen like issues that we want to end up on your side of the balance sheet post divorce, right? So I feel like that's like one of the pieces that I'll add in is I'll always say, if you really want to do this, like you said, the expenses of the house, but
Hmm.
then also what do we not know about that the house needs, improvements on or repairs or whatever. Like let's also think about that to protect you. So, what do you think is the biggest risk that people actually, when they have real estate and divorce, what do you
Hmm.
think is a risk in that? Like from your experience that you see?
Right. I think the biggest risk really is this financial strain that it can
Mhm.
have for the spouse who wants to keep the home. And usually it's, the stay-at-home spouse who wants to keep the home because they can't picture themselves living anywhere else, or they just simply don't think they can afford something else.
Mhm.
Um, and that's the biggest risk because what happens is that their cash, their liquidity is going to be tied up to the house. What about monthly expenses? What about these emergencies we talked about? It's all tied up now. And eventually, if they sell the house outside of the divorce, let's say a couple of years later, they're going to be hit with this huge tax, these huge tax consequences that it's going to put them bigger in the hole. So what do they do then? I think that is definitely the biggest risk is, well, let's look just a little bit further into the future. Is this actually a viable option here?
The worst thing would be you get the house and financially you can't sustain it, and then you're forced to sell and you incur the full cost of sale.
That's right.
And that's expensive, especially in this town where pricing is so high. So I think that's the absolute we want to avoid at all times, is that one party who's really about keeping the house, and then like you said, they can't
Hmm.
financially, so then they have to sell and pay whatever 5-6%, and then preparing the house for sale. That's
Expensive. And again, this emotional burden that comes with getting a house ready to sell on your own, maybe
right.
with or without kids, relocating, finding another home, right? All of that comes with a price.
And then when would you say that you are kind of trying to, in the process of the divorce and making
Hmm.
decisions around the marital home or even another home, let's say, when do you like kind of try to tighten all of that up in this process? If you can just kind of talk about how you bring in the structure of figuring out the final agreement on the house or an equity
Hmm.
buyout or a refinance or whatever, what your experience is and what are some tips that you might have around timing for that, thoughts around that. I think the parenting plan is so like that's always in the forefront. That seems to be the biggest one, but I kind of feel like the house, in my experience, it kind of gets like sometimes thrown in at the end. And I'm
Hmm.
like, wait a second, like we needed to talk about this way a long time ago.
Right.
I get the mediation calls. I'm going to mediation next week and I want to keep the house, but I don't know if I can afford it. And I'm like, what the heck? So, anyway, just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I start thinking about it as soon as the client says, I want to keep the house. Right. And at that point, I should have the financial disclosures to see what is your income. And so in my head, I'm already calculating whether or not I believe, just based on their income alone, they can afford to stay in the home. From there, we talk about, let's look at the mortgage loan. How much are you paying every month? And then on top of that, what are your other expenses? So as soon as the client says, I want to keep the home, my name's not on the mortgage, or both our names are on the mortgage, my next step is say, hey, go talk to someone, go talk to Cindy and figure out if this is even a possibility. Right. And so I have them, I'll send them to you. You have that conversation with them. And then, well, we have to structure, can you assume the home? Is that a possibility? Is the other spouse going to agree and cooperate in that process? Are they willing to take that financial risk as well to stay on the mortgage? So after they talk to you, we get a plan in place. And then the other aspect I look at the same time is, well, if they don't have enough income or if they won't qualify based on their conversations with you, how do we structure either spousal support or child support or an award of assets to the spouse to make it work. I always have a contingency plan because what if that doesn't happen and we can't settle on that in mediation? Then what? The clients have to understand that we can come up with this perfect plan, but if the other spouse does not agree, we have to come up with a plan B. And that's working with you to come up with a plan B as well. What does that look like if we can't assume and we must refinance? What does that look like? And hey, well, what if the other spouse comes in now and says, hey, I want to buy you out?
Right.
When do we sign a quick claim deed?
Right.
Right? How does that impact our clients?
Yeah.
And so I rather send the clients to you sooner rather than later. So I have that information going into mediation.
Yep.
And for mediation, I would have you on standby and call you in case something changes and I need your expertise.
Yeah, and I actually have that happen, I would say about half the time where they do need to call me during mediation because things are changing. And I always do the plan B. Like plan A is, let's say we want to keep the existing mortgage terms because that feels good, the interest rate's low, but plan B is this, and is this other plan B just painful enough that it's a hard no? So how do we then move forward with that information and having that before mediation? I just had a really interesting client where they own two homes and they're of course on both homes. And for some reason they thought they had to refinance each home simultaneously and take the other one off. So there's just really, and that wasn't the case in this particular situation because he could afford it income wise of refinancing and keeping himself on the other loan and all this stuff. But just even something like that you think is, I don't know, I guess I'm like, where did you think of that? And he goes, I just thought that, there's all ways to think about lending, but we don't want clients to just kind of be on their own on this because that can be scary and dangerous and unsure, and we don't want to make a mistake and all that good stuff. So that's why I always say beginning of the process, let's figure this out. And then I wanted to ask you, I just think this is always an interesting question do you have like a really memorable case that you worked on that was like super impactful that you think would be good to share?
I do. I had this client who got married really young. I think they were 20 or 21 years old when they married. And now they're in their late 40s, early 50s getting a divorce. They have grown children, one minor child. So there's children. Definitely there's a home involved. And there was a battle over the home. Who would keep it and why? And everyone had their reasons of why they wanted the home. My client did have a really good reason. She could afford to keep the home, and it really truly was for the stability of her grown children who come back home to visit and spend the summers at home. Whereas the other spouse, I believe, wanted it just to spite my client. And so they did agree, hey, if my client keeps the home, she'll have to assume the loan. And I think this was about 3 years ago. And at the end of the divorce, I did not send my client to CDLP. I said,
You probably didn't know about us then.
Didn't. I was so stuck in my litigation world, right? At that time, I said, hey, go talk to a mortgage lender, find out what your options are, and then work with them. That's all I said. And so she came back and she said, yes, I can assume, worst case scenario, I can refinance, I can afford to do so. And all I heard from her was the assumption process was so messy. It was just easier for me to refinance and take that hit. Fortunately, she is a client who can afford to take that hit, but it impacts me because there are so many clients, especially in this environment currently, that if they can't assume the loan, they can't afford to double their mortgage loan.
Right.
It would ruin them. And so that's had an impact on me because now I know CDLPs are here and all the support you all can help offer to make sure that assumption can go through. And if it can't, And if it won't go through, you know ahead of time what the risks are and what this plan B is and help us plan better for plan B.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad we're here. Well, May, I just want to say I so appreciate your time today. I know you're busy and I respect you so much as an amazing professional in the space here in the greater Seattle area. One of the things I will say too is I'm always so impressed with when we chat and you, like when you told me about your kind of post divorce plan that you have. I don't hear that
Mhm.
very often. So I wanted to not only ask you how, like, if somebody wanted to find you or learn more about you, how to do that, but I also wanted you to touch on just briefly about kind of your post-divorce plan that you give clients that I think
Mhm.
is super amazing.
Well, thanks, Cindy. I offer, this holistic approach to family law, right? I support you before your divorce, during the divorce, and after, because there are so many questions after, like, what's a quit claim deed? What's a RETA? Right. And then what about these beneficiaries for my life insurance or my health insurance? What do I do? Right.
Hmm.
Because often we send our clients away with a property settlement agreement or separation contract, and we said, good luck.
Right.
Right. And the relationship usually ends right there. So, what I do is that I support my clients through that process to make sure the cars are in their names. They understand what a quit claim deed is, and they understand, hey, if the assumption won't go through, what about a refinance? And I connect them with the experts after if needed. And I am there until the client says, hey, May, I really don't think I need you anymore. But I stay on to offer that support, whatever it is that they need.
Love that.
And so I do this on an a la carte basis where the clients can come to me post divorce if their attorney doesn't offer that.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
great.
so I do that as well. And I just want to make sure that when you leave with the plan, you understand how to execute it.
Yep. Yep.
So
And people can
mhm,
find you through,
my website is the best. It is www.shelegal.com.
and
And
it's,
that she,
yeah,
as
SHIH.
that's right.
Good.
And I am a one woman team, so I think that is fitting.
Yep, that is fitting. I love that. And any parting or final thoughts for today as we wrap up? And again, I'm just so grateful that you had time to give me and to everyone today.
Oh, Cindy, I'm also super grateful for you inviting me to your podcast and talking about this really important topic. My last bit of party advice here is to look at your divorce. It's really a financial separation. And so there are times where your attorneys will tell you to put on your business hat and do it, listen to them, because we can take some of the emotions out of this. So you walk out with a much better, much fairer agreement, and you do not spend a ton of money on attorney's fees.
I love that. That's beautiful. Well, again, thank you, May, so much for today. And I think what you've shared is so helpful. And I do know that people are going to hear it and they're going to learn things and they're going to probably be reaching out. So, and again, it's really a pleasure that we know each other. So again, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on Divorce Mortgage Strategies, powered by the Divorce Lending Association. If today's conversation brought you clarity, insight, or inspiration, we encourage you to subscribe and share this episode with others in your circle. For more resources, or to connect with a certified divorce lending professional in your area, visit divorcelendingassociation.com. And be sure to download the free Divorce Strategy Hub mobile app for tools, education, and support designed to guide you through the financial side of divorce. Until next time, remember, in divorce, the mortgage isn't the problem, it's the plan.